Hey guys, welcome back! It's really hard to believe that the PlayStation 3 had already surpassed 10 years of existence, a system that had a quite harsh initial start. So let's recall its history and point out some of the titles that are still relish playing on the system. Let's take a look. The PlayStation 3, Sony's black sheep, was originally released in November of 2006 in Japan and in the United States. European and Australian PlayStation fans would have to wait till March of the following year to get their hands on the system. It was one of the most expensive consoles to this date, mainly due to its incorporated Blu-ray disc player that would be Sony's media of choice for their brand new system. It arrived a full year after its main rival, the Xbox 360, but it would offer out of the box a lot more features than Microsoft's second console, like built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 2.0, HDMI, and as said, the Blu-ray disc player, a format that was taking its first steps and going against the HD DVD that brings to mind the battle between Betamax and VHS back in the 80s. As you know, the Betamax format was developed by Sony and released to the market in 1975, and 10 years later, by 1985, the VHS was declared the winner, cause both the format and VHS players were way cheaper than Betamax compatible machines. But let's not forget that the porn industry was also a huge deal around that time, that used this cheaper format since the beginning to reach their specific audience. Over 20 years later, Sony, as one of the major players supporting the Blu-ray disc, would fight with all their strength so that this time around, this brand new HD format would emerge victorious. The PS3 was announced at 2005's E3, and a prototype was shown that would offer 2 HDMI ports, 6 USB and 3 Ethernet connections, along with the awkward boomerang controller. Obviously that all those ports and connections were going to be reduced, so a year later the final design was unveiled, both for the console and its controller, this last one retaining the DualShock look from its older brothers. The 60GB model would cost around $600 and was one of the few that offered a card reader and the ability to natively play PS2 games. It was often considered as a supercomputer that even the US Air Force would pick over 1700 PS3s to create this machine capable of calculating 500 teraflops per second to be able to analyze high-definition satellite imagery. Just like its predecessor that offered out of the box an alternative to basic DVD players, the PS3 would also allow playback of movies in Blu-ray format with up to 1080p Full HD and 7.1 environmental audio, marketing itself as a true alternative to standard Blu-ray disc players that could cost around the same price as Sony's powerful system. Hugely criticized by fans was the use of the same font for the PlayStation 3 lettering, as seen on Sony's own Spider-Man trilogy directed by Sam Raimi and released between 2002 and 2007. And besides that, the original PS3 model would also suffer from overheating, leading to that infamous yellow light of death. The release of the slim model in September of 2009 helped to eliminate those overheating problems, consequently increasing sales. 3 years later, a new revision would arrive, smaller and lighter, with practically half the weight of the original model and known as the Super Slim. As of March of 2016, Sony revealed that the PlayStation 3 sold around 86 million units worldwide, and a year later, by March of 2017, was discontinued. So, to celebrate this groundbreaking and powerful console that was misunderstood by many and hard to work with to others, Here's a bunch of my favorite titles that I truly love to play on the system, others that I still get back to quite often, and a couple that, in a way or another, marked this generation.
The Orange Box.
The Orange Box is one of the greatest compilations ever in the history of video games. It's my opinion, obviously. Besides offering Half-Life 2 and all its following chapters, there's Portal and Team Fortress 2. But the most mediatic thing about this particular version was that Gabe Newell refused to publish it for the PlayStation 3, stating that it was a waste of everybody's time. So, Electronic Arts was the company responsible for the PS3 port, who gathered a team of PS3 programming wizards to get the job done. It's not the best version, but it's something I'll recall forever, mainly cause, a couple of years later, Gabe Newell came forward, assuring players that the PS3 version of Portal 2 was the best. Go figure.
What now? Whoa! Hold on! Alright, let's get off before the next ride starts.
Yakuza 4.
Exclusive to the PlayStation 3, Yakuza 4 is my favorite installment of the series. Bear in mind that I've yet to play 5 and 0 and 6 will only arrive in Europe by March of 2018. It's a groundbreaking series that had its origins on the PlayStation 2 by Sega's trustful hands. This particular entry in the series had its original debut in March of 2010 in Japan and 1 year later exactly in the US and Europe. In my honest opinion, the whole series has a slight taste of Shenmue, and that's something that grabbed me right from the beginning. And this is, for me, one of the greatest exclusive franchises that PlayStation consoles ever had.
God of War 3.
Kratos will have...
While we wait for the new God of War, let's recall its third amazing installment. Obviously that the PS3 was made of exclusives, cause as you know, games made exclusively for that console would always get the most out of it. And God of War was no exception. Released just when Yakuza 4 arrived in Japan by March of 2010, it was target of a huge marketing campaign that turned it into a huge commercial success. It was even advertised through this paint scheme on Joey Logano's NASCAR vehicle. But this wasn't the case of a huge campaign marketing a bad game. God of War 3 is amazing and a must-have for everyone that is collecting for the system. And have you seen the huge scale of the Titans? What a spectacle! As a true enthusiast of mythology, the God of War series was always something that I praised and cherished since its first installment. Looking forward to the brand new vision that Santa Monica Studio is bringing to Kratos.
Heavy Rain.
After the Nomad Soul and Fahrenheit, the French developer Quantic Dream offered PS3 players this incredible and personal experience, sort of graphic adventure by the name Heavy Rain, released once more by 2010. We immediately connect with the characters and were compelled to solve the mystery of the Origami Killer in this interactive movie that is gossiped around the web, that was supposedly under adaptation to the big screen. As said, this is a movie already, an interactive one, so don't bother. It was initially also planned to be released for the PC, and prior to that, even as an Xbox 360 exclusive, but for this last one, Microsoft turned it down due to its kidnapping central focus, foreseeing a media scandal. It ended up as a huge success, both for Quantic Dream and for Sony, with reviewers praising the atmosphere, the story, the music, the controls, that turns Heavy Rain into an involving and exhilarating experience. It was awarded as the best PS3 game of 2010 by GameSpy and IGN, besides other impressive achievements for music and technical innovation in gaming and visual engineering.
You have reached your destination. Are you ready to show your courage in order to save your son? Listen carefully.
Little Big Planet 1 and 2.
Maravilhoso assombro.
Now for a couple more exclusive titles, here's Little Big Planet 1 and 2. Never played or owned the third chapter, but I guess I should also mention it. So what a breath of fresh air this was back then, and still is if you're playing the franchise for the very first time. We just want to clear one more stage again and again, in where we control Sackboy in this highly addictive and exclusive series of puzzle games. In these first two entries in the series, gameplay is centered around traditional two-dimensional platforming that drastically evolved from that simple concept to the inclusion of minigames and even other genres. In-game there's also a ton of cooperative puzzles with special prize bubbles that can only be collected when played with a friend. And we could create our own levels and share them with the world. And there's around 10 million user-created levels available on the PlayStation Network. Amazing.
Need for Speed Hot Pursuit.
It's been a long time since I had such fun with a Need for Speed game. This last-gen reincarnation of the legendary Hot Pursuit series is really addictive, that also has that long-lost Burnout touch, cause as you know, it was developed by Criterion Games. It's funny that most of these games, most of my favorite games on the PS3, were released in 2010. My son was born in 2010, so 2010 was a great year for me in all respects. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit was released in November of 2010, and it introduced the auto lock system that allows the player to connect with friends for head-to-head races, giving that extra boost of commitment and engagement with the game itself, just like it happens on other games that came after. It features career modes both for racers and for cops, and the game's location is 4 times bigger than, for instance, Burnout Paradise, that was Criterion's previous title. This was accomplished with the help from the Battlefield team, Digital Illusions, also known as DICE. As for vehicles, they're all licensed, and the sentence in order is: all the cars you dreamed of driving in the way you dreamed on driving them.
Deus Ex Human Revolution.
What really attracts me in Human Revolution is the Blade Runner and Tron feeling. Obviously that this game hasn't got anything to do with both those movies, but the futuristic setting and soundtrack really drives me into those memories of watching those cinema masterpieces for the very first time back in my youth.
Subsection 6.
It is set in the year 2027, only 10 years from now, in where we play as Adam, a former element from a SWAT team, now contracted as a security officer by the Serif Industries. It functions as a prequel to the original Deus Ex, combining first-person shooter, role-playing and stealth elements with quests and tons of exploration. So the Serif Industries suffers a large-scale attack, in where the player comes highly injured, being later submitted to an extensive augmentation ordered by the company's CEO, David Sarif, so that we could go and chase down the attackers. An amazing plot awaits us in this frenetic cyberpunk alternative reality.
Dante's Inferno.
PlayStation is the God of War's middle name, so Dante's Inferno should be its younger brother. It came to close the gap for Xbox players that also wanted Kratos on their system. I speak for myself, obviously. It would have been awesome to play God of War on the Xbox and Xbox 360. Dante's Inferno came from the recently deceased Visceral Games, a studio responsible for the amazing Dead Space series, besides many other groundbreaking titles. So let's just pay an homage to Visceral with probably the most controversial title that came right from the deeps of hell.
By all that is holy.
As you're already guessing, it was based on Inferno from the Divine Comedy, in where we play as Dante, reimagined by Visceral as a Templar Knight. Beatrice is also seen as a sort of damsel in distress and not as Dante's savior, like it should be, and how she was portrayed in the poem, so this minor change ended up annoying a lot of people, mainly scholars and professors. But Electronic Arts ended up as the main responsible for all the controversy and bad press, due to their dull marketing campaigns around this particular game. However, I don't see people complaining about the tons of games that are similar to, let's say, Call of Duty or Medal of Honor, but as for Dante's Inferno being similar to God of War, unleashed such a wave of criticism that practically everyone ignored the creative and visually impressive graphic nature of Visceral's depiction of hell. And it would be awesome to see Kratos versus Dante, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots.
Metal Gear Solid 4 is another exclusive PlayStation 3 title that must be highlighted and praised. Another Kojima masterpiece set 5 years after Sons of Liberty, in where we control Old Snake in one last mission. Snake aged prematurely, that was artificially coded into his genes, and is now prone to even pass out when receiving damage or being under huge amounts of stress.
Snake, are you alright?
To calm him down, simply eat or drink something, smoke, and why not, read an adult magazine. He's got only 1 year to live, so better get the most out of it. The funny was that this fourth installment in the series wasn't supposed to even exist, but public demand left Kojima with no other choice than make a direct sequel to Metal Gear Solid 2. Kojima simply left too many mysteries to be unveiled in the end of Sons of Liberty that fans practically begged for that sequel. Also, and after Snake Eater, Kojima stated that it was retiring as director of the Metal Gear series, so a new team leader was announced for this fourth installment. Again, fans demanded Kojima's involvement in the game. He even received death threats if he really opted not to. So, Guns of the Patriots ended up being directed by Shuyo Murata and co-directed by Hideo Kojima. So I guess that Kojima was really looking forward to step away from the Metal Gear series and from Konami altogether. It was released in the early days of the console by June of 2008 and helped to sell a lot of systems with an estimated total sales of around 6 million copies worldwide.
Those Gecko will try to ram you. Don't let them get too close.
The Motorstorm franchise.
The Motorstorm franchise was my first priority for the PlayStation 3 since I watched that trailer on 2005's E3. All the mud being splattered all across the screen and the overwhelming tractor formation really grabbed my attention. But PS3's price held me back. I wasn't prepared to pay that huge amount of money just because I was eagerly looking forward to play Evolution Studios' venture into this new HD era. I was always a fan of their work since the very first World Rally Championship licensed game for the PlayStation 2 back in 2001, so this was going to be huge, cause Evolution Studios always had the backing from Sony and all the tools to make it happen. And after the release of the very first Motorstorm, Sony ended up acquiring Evolution Studios by September of 2007. Motorstorm Pacific Rift followed in 2008, that takes us to these beautiful locations around volcanic mountainsides, jungles, beaches, caves, etc. It introduced monster trucks and a 4-player split-screen feature. Riders on bikes and ATVs can now throw punches to other drivers, just like it was seen in Road Rash back in early 90s. Motorstorm Apocalypse took the franchise further back in 2011. It takes place in an apocalyptic city based on California's Bay Area, packed with 40 tracks that can be completely devastated by tornadoes and earthquakes. Helicopters can also crash into buildings, causing huge chaos. There's also pedestrians that will attack us with guns and stuff, and the hell as simply break loose in the apocalypse. And a freaking cool feature that this game offers is the ability to play it using stereoscopic 3D. Have you tried it? No? You don't know what you're missing. Check my episode totally dedicated to video games with stereoscopic 3D support.
The Uncharted franchise.
Back in 2006, LucasArts was planning the release of the greatest Indiana Jones action-adventure game the world had ever seen by the time Drake's Fortune was announced. Needless to say that it caught LucasArts completely off guard. Since 1996 that Naughty Dog develops video games exclusively for Sony consoles, and their brand new IP for the PlayStation 3 couldn't have been more successful than it was, selling over 2.6 million copies and being praised by everyone that played it. On this precise date, November the 19th of 2017, when this episode was published, Uncharted Drake's Fortune celebrates its 10th anniversary. The voice acting, the frenetic action, the highly inspirational and cinematic soundtrack, the overwhelming and breathtaking locations, all these tasty ingredients would immediately spawn two other amazing sequels, completing one of the greatest trilogies ever to grace the gaming world.
Something you don't see every day.
Being a huge fan of the genre, I was eager to play not only Drake's Fortune, but also Among Thieves and Drake's Deception, something I managed to do just a couple years ago. And what a ride it was! Loved every minute of this journey. All three titles managed to grab me really tight in this sort of mix between Indiana Jones and National Treasure, without forgetting, obviously, the Tomb Raider franchise. Nathan Drake's second adventure that arrived in 2009 would explore even further the power of PS3's cell processor to deliver way more realistic animations, locations, and cinematic sequences. As stated by the developers, Among Thieves uses between 90 and 100% of the cell processor, being most likely one of the few PS3 games that are fully optimized to take advantage of the real capabilities that the PlayStation 3 offered.
Hello, Harry.
An install of the game to the hard disk wasn't even needed, and the 25 gigabytes of the Blu-ray disc were completely used. An incredible achievement in every aspect, no doubt, and to complement that, it sold over 6 million copies, being also rewarded as one of the greatest video games of all time. 2 years later, Drake's Deception was launched, built with a more advanced game engine that offered improved physics, even more realistic animations, textures and graphic environmental effects such as water, smoke, sand and fire dynamics, leading to one of the main goals of Naughty Dog for this game, to achieve that 100% of processing power of the PlayStation 3. The development was so extremely focused on that objective, pushing the technology to its limits, that this third chapter wasn't as compelling and mind-boggling as the previous one. Just like in Motorstorm Apocalypse, stereoscopic 3D was also implemented onto Uncharted 3, and to a pretty damn good effect also.
The Last of Us.
And from Naughty Dog came in 2013, another amazing masterpiece exclusively for the PlayStation 3, winning tons of awards and being considered as one of the greatest video games of all time. The Last of Us is an action-adventure game just like Uncharted, but in a survival horror mode set in an hostile and post-apocalyptic depiction of the United States. This was the first time that Naughty Dog had split into two teams, one developing Uncharted 3 and the other creating The Last of Us, and they came up with one of the most memorable stories ever written for a video game. A true epic that really stood out among the crowd, and a perfect example of what could be accomplished when you're driven by passion for the business and having all the tools required. The Last of Us is beautiful, no matter from what perspective we look at it. The violence depicted is necessary and comprehensible to keep us safe in such an hostile environment, and the female characters are treated respectfully in this game. There's no poorly dressed babes or a damsel in distress.
Not a bad read.
Well, at first, Ellie seems like a vulnerable one, but soon we realize how strong she is.
Where did you get that?
We simply care about these characters and we just want to keep them safe. That's what The Last of Us is able to deliver right from the first couple of minutes of gameplay. And it will surely make you laugh and most certainly cry, something that not every developer can quite accomplish in a video game. Naughty Dog nailed it completely, and there's no doubt in my mind that the PS3 was essential to create something so visually and narratively outstanding that even the PS4 will be struggling to beat. But it's Naughty Dog, and I'm sure that they won't be letting us down in the near future. There's a few more exclusive PS3 games that must be highlighted, and obviously many other superb multi-platform titles that I've never played on the system, cause I've simply came across the better versions in most cases. And needless to say that playing driving games on the PS3 with a DualShock is such a pain. My original 160GB hard drive died while making this episode, so I had to grab a replacement ASAP. Went for a 500 gigs hard disk, and needless to say that I lost my save games for all these titles, and to capture footage had to start every single one from the beginning. Yeah. Stuff that happens with these new consoles. Even so, hope you've enjoyed this episode, a sort of tribute to the mighty PS3 that gave birth to awesome exclusive franchises. There's a ton of videos on my channel related to so many other systems, showcasing also my favorite titles for each one of those, so please browse the channel and take a journey back in time to the early days of video gaming. While you're at it, click on that bell icon so that you're notified when the next video becomes available. Also, don't forget to like, to comment, to share, and to subscribe to It's a Pixel Thing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode.